Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday and welcome to Weightless with Dr. Carol Penn. We are so excited to be here with you and have this time together on a Sunday afternoon. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So listen, this show, hosted by yours truly, Dr. Carol, is an exciting 10-part series where we have the opportunity to explore all things that are weightless. Whether it's weightless, as in we want to release some weight and feel weightless and light in our bodies, or weightlessness to the spiritual, weightlessness to the emotional. And we go on this journey of that weightlessness, the weight loss itself, the weight loss maintenance, the extended health and wellness benefits, and how do you get to those health and wellness opportunities for yourself. We are so excited that you are joining us live. And today's episode, my goodness, to be weightless, their theme, the meditation, the medicine of embracing Buffalo, and our guest, the executive director of the Western New York Peace Center, Miss Deidre M.L., will be our guest today. And we will be right back after a word from our sponsors and listening to our exciting theme song. Here we go.
Weightless, weightless. No matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Greatness. Time you opened up your eyes, you were courageous. Courageous. If only they could see you going through your paces. It's amazing. Weightless. No matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Time you open up your eyes, you walk courageous. If only they could see it going through your paces. It's amazing. Weightless. Matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Time you opened up your eyes, you were courageous. If only they could see you going through your paces. It's amazing.
Weightless with Dr. Carol Penn is brought to you by Penn Global Visions, Penn Global Medical Group, and the Tuxedo Connection. We'd like to thank you for supporting this program and for joining us today. We invite you to listen to the podcast of all of our shows at anchor.com, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as videos on YouTube. So for now, get ready to take notes, clean out your ears, open them up, open your arms, and here we go. Let's return to Dr. Carol and her super friend guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that word from our sponsors. Oh my goodness, it is so exciting to be here. And I'm really excited to introduce our next guest, a first-time visitor on Weightless with Dr. Carol. But you know me, I really like to bring our guest on camera, not just read their bios, but for you to really kind of take in their vibe, to begin to get to know them, and for them to hear their accolades and hear them and witness them as we welcome them on air. So without further ado, let me bring my colleague, the amazing, the wonderful Deidre M.L. on camera as we welcome her to Weightless with Dr. Carol Penn. Who is Deidre? Deidre ML is the executive director of the Western New York Peace Center. Deidre is also a trustee, executive administrator, and program coordinator of the Congregation of Israel Cultural Center, in which she is a co-founder. She is an educator, a counselor, a community health worker, a maternal child health specialist, herbalist, urban homesteader, farmer, and doula. She serves her community with grace, integrity, poise, and great appreciation and attention to what's most important. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Sociology and a certificate in Applied Sociology from Buffalo State College. Deidre has been certified as a childbirth educator through the International Birth and Wellness Project and the International Childbirth Education Association. Certified doula, life cycle center, maternal child health specialist. She has been a birth activist, family advocate, and proponent for international women's rights for over 20 years. Deidre has worked hard and kept the Western New York Peace Center going in more ways than we can say. She and her husband first became supporters of the Latin American Solidarity Committee and the IFCO Pastors for Peace. Her son joined Camp Peace Prince in 2014, and she became a parent volunteer every year since. The administrative, financial, and general functioning aspects over the past many months could not have been accomplished without her. Deidre has inspired and balanced our efforts since she started as office manager, come Shiro, since February 2018. She is a wife, mother, caregiver, and organizer, hard worker, and peaceful, caring being. We couldn't be more grateful to Deidre for all her selfless dedication and vision. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Wait, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Carol. I said we have to shorten that. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I am thrilled to have you on. Of course, we met and we became connected in such a unique way with just something just extraordinary that occurred in history. And of course, we're talking about the massacre that took place in the city of Buffalo on May 14th. So that is the connection. That's how we came to be introduced to each other through this project called Embracing Buffalo. And we'll be able to get a little bit more into that in a few minutes. But I just wanted our wonderful audience to, kind of, have that little piece, that little bit of history. But I'm going to ask everyone now to join me in making a moment for ourselves, and we take a few breaths together. How does that sound, Sister Deirdre?
Wonderful.
All right. So if everyone go ahead, place a hand on a heart maybe, and a hand on the lower abdomen. If it feels good, go ahead and close your eyes just for a moment. Drawing the breath in through the nose. And as you exhale, relaxing just a little bit more, because we're going to really take in and grow and listen and transform in this conversation. Go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in and savor that and Relax with us as we relax and let the conversation flow on the other side. And one more time, one more breath in. Let it out with a sigh. When you're ready, let us all let our eyes open up and let's jump into this conversation. So, how is it you are now the executive director of the New York Peace Center? And I believe that you are the first African American executive director of the New York Peace Center. Can you take us a little bit on that journey of how you became such a daughter of determination to get from all the things that you are and all the journey that led you to those transformative steps, if you will? Give us a bit of that story.
Well, to make the long story short, I let go. That's the long. I let go, and things came together. It's funny that you ask, that about me as far as kind of how I got to this point where I am. I just talked to an old friend. He was an editor at the Challenger newspaper. He's now 88 years old, but he wrote a story about me when I was 15. And it was a story in dealing with the Buffalo public school system. And I basically, and I still wear head wraps today for cultural reasons, but I wore head wraps to school. Sometimes, days on, days off. But I was basically kicked out of school for over 2 weeks for wearing a head wrap. My grades were good. Everything was outstanding, but I had this head wrap on that, the the administration at that time, principals and so on, didn't understand. If I'm not Muslim, if I'm not Muslim, why should I be wearing headgear as if I'm about to play baseball? So I began to explain to them that I'm African American, is a part of my culture, is part of my heritage. I am an African dancer. This is something I am aware of. My mother has taught me my history, and this is something that the women that I look up to do. So, shorten up the story, Ted Kirkland of the Challenger newspaper at that time wrote a story about me, and I was on the front page of that paper. And I would never forget, and this is a black newspaper, a local black newspaper. And I'll never forget when I was ready to give up, I had my teacher, Mrs. Yvonne James Brown, said, "No, we're not giving up." And I just said, it's not a big deal. It's just a piece of fabric. And she said, "No, it's more than that." And I think that was a pivotal point of knowing that what I have to say, understanding my intuition and my connection, that it mattered, and that the way I lived my life mattered to the rest of those around me. It mattered if we won or if we lost. I'm sorry, I didn't notice that this was going to happen.
Oh, it's all right. Take your time.
The teachers in my high school at that time were so strong, and they gave me a lot of strength. And so we fought that battle, and we won. And we changed the school code to allowing cultural attire to be worn in the school system, as long as it wasn't, disruptive or what have you. But that kind of changed how I looked at things as far as how can I make a change to my world, even if it's the surrounding world, my innermost world. And my mother has always taught me to fight. Um, and and taught me that I was a queen and that I needed to understand my history and I needed to stand up for what I believed in. Um, and so, years later, I continued in nonprofit organizations as a teen. Um, 2002, my husband and I started an organization um, that basically, we teach and educate and try to uplift people in dealing with social issues from a biblical perspective, historical perspective, um, which is a little bit different, I would say, from the common church or Christian church that people may be, more familiar with. Um, we believe in Christ, but we also believe in Torah, and we believe that we want to see equality and equity throughout the world, and we try to show it from a biblical perspective. So I continued on this path through throughout my life, and I believe that's what led me to the Peace Center. And what's funny is my school counselor, which was a big help in my life in high school, um, was also one of the uh, founding members of the Western New York Peace Center. And I did not know that at that time until years later. We bumped into each other, and she told me about the Latin American Solidarity Committee and what they were doing for Cuba, and the caravans, the caravan that collects supplies and so on to take to Cuba every year. And my husband and I, wanted to support it. So that's how we first got connected, with the Western New York Peace Center. And my counselor, in Maxine and Sarah, I always give her a shout out. She was just phenomenal, phenomenal. And good afternoon to you, I see. And so she made a very and she continues to make a big impact in my life as a mentor and supporter. um so through LASC, it's a short name for Latin American Solidarity Committee. um we supported on and off throughout the years, and then I said I wanted something different for my son than his regular camps. I was a homeschooler. I still am a homeschooler, but I homeschooled him for first 5 years of his life, his school time, first through sixth grade. And I said, there have to be something else as an alternative that will teach him more peaceful values. And so I kept seeing Camp Peace Prince, and I didn't connect the two at the time. I didn't know they were all connected until I got in there. And so, being a homeschooler that I am, I became a volunteer, a parent volunteer. So, learned the ins and outs, helped out a lot. And, they began to, reach out to me more about, helping with, co-directing. 2018, I became the office manager. I said, "Hey, Vicky, remember me? I'm Summer's mom." She said, "Okay, I remember you." I said, "Hey, I see that you need an office manager. I'm looking for a little job. So of course I already have this organization that of course, I'm not getting paid. So I said, 10 hours, a week, at the Peace Center, I can, earn a little extra and I can still do something I believe in. And so that's what I did. And I've been there ever since. And I think, well, was it last year? It's been a year already. Last June, I became officially the executive director. And I'm the first Black woman executive director in 55 years of the Peace Center. Um, and I think that it came about through, I would say, the love that the Peace Center has for humanity. I think that it started out um, as a clergy and laity concerned, or a chapter, clergy and laity concerned, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Was a part of this a national organization. And he made a call out to all, these chapters saying, listen, we must stand up against Vietnam War. And the directors at that time, this is before the Peace Center really became the Peace Center, the pastors and so on at that time said, we hear the call. And, they heard the call as ministers of faith. And so I would say a few years later, the Peace Center as a nonprofit, separate from religious or denomination, was born. And they wanted to make sure that it was non-denominational and non-religious, so that all people could feel welcomed and know that they are, cared for and cared about. So the Peace Center has been on this fight since 1967. First with the Vietnam War. Secondly, of course, dealing with the draft and providing protection and so on for individuals against the draft during that time. And then they began a fight against the issues concerning Latin America, and connected with the Latin American Solidarity Committee, which was kind of like on its own for a little while, and basically banded together. So the last 30 years, Latin American Solidarity Committee has been a task force, and a very strong task force, of the Western New York Peace Center. And so since then, we have been supporting peace throughout the world, in Afghanistan, Iran, and Yemen, Africa, and so on, throughout the years. And we continue to do that. In the most recent years, we have really focused centrally on Buffalo and the immediate needs of the community. For about 15 years, we had a conflict resolution program we would do in the Buffalo public school systems. And this was, it was very good. It was from the 90s to early 2000s. And now, and Vicki Ross, as you know, is one of our colleagues. She's our former director. And at the time, she was doing a lot of interconnecting in the community, and doing that conflict resolution work in the Buffalo public school systems. And also with at-risk youth and youth that are, that were in prison. I forgot the word for it, but youth under 16 and under, doing the same conflict resolution and self-building work. So that I hope to plan, to bring back to our work, because we took some time off from doing that and went more into the political atmosphere, especially when Trump came into office. We really had to take to the streets. It's not that we weren't used to taking to the streets. We've always done that. If people know the Western New York Peace Center, they know us for protests. They know us for our rallies. They know us for, our campaigning. But we really had to take to the streets in 2017 and 2018 and 2019 and so on. So we had the largest, I don't know if it's in the history of Buffalo, but in the last 50 years, the largest women's march and protest march in the history of Buffalo in 2017. And we had over 4,000 people come out to City Hall, or into the city, at City Hall, to protest the rights of women and what women care about. And so I have continued this journey and this fight. And those are one of the major things that connected to me, was speaking up for women's rights.
Wow, thank you so much for the richness of that, the detail of that. And it is, it's so good to learn this and to hear this history, your journey into your leadership. Could you define for us or share with us what, really, what does leadership mean? What does it mean in your life, and what does leadership look like?
Hmm. I think leadership means to look ahead. When you have a person or persons that are able and are willing to look forward, that always have the future in mind, they begin to walk towards that without attempting to try to lead anyone. But
Mhm.
as they kind of go towards the light or vision that they see, others begin to follow and believe, that same light, I believe. I think leadership is servitude in the sense of not being, so selfless that you forget yourself, but that you care for yourself so much in preserving that you have this preservation spirit for the rest of your people and environment, because that will sustain you. um I think that um I think it takes courage. It takes a lot of courage to lead. I don't think it's for the wimps. It's not for the wimpy. It's not for the faint at heart. And you can't do it alone. You're gonna find yourself alone a lot. But you know, there are people, as you get to different points in your leadership, there are people that, kind of come into your life, and that you can connect to for the right reasons, or that helps you for the right reasons. As I connected to you, Dr. Carol.
Yes, yes, thank you, and likewise for this incredible connection. And now, what I like our audience to understand, if you could take us into a little bit of the history. Buffalo is known as one of the most segregated cities in the United States. And, it from my research and what I understand, it didn't get that way by choice. It was created in a very intentional way. And I was just
Mhm.
wondering if you could just take us through how this came to be, a little bit of the history of that.
Okay, well, I can give you a little bit. We were just talking earlier, and I was saying how many layers, there is, to this situation. And I think that our story is really not a new story. It's really, we really have a lot in common with what we say the Rust Belt cities in the North, Cleveland, Detroit, places like that along the Great Lakes and around what we call the Rust Belt, or where the factories, big manufacturing centers, began in the early 1900s, and in the 50s and so on. So I think that, of course, United States is built off of immigration, right? Um, when you're in a city that is at major waterways, you're going to have major immigration. Before planes, before trains, you had boats for major, integration into a community, into the United States. So we have the Erie Canal that was big on trade. It was a trade center. The Buffalo, New York was the actually the first city to have electric lights. We were called the City of Lights at one point. So we were really a major metropolitan city for trade and for new Americans to come here from Europe mainly. And so as you begin to get into the Industrial Revolution, Industrial Age, now you have Irish immigrants, you have the German immigrants coming and settling in the inner city to do manufacturing or for the manufacturing jobs. Well, as time go on, you have another wave of immigrants, right? That's Southern European and so on. Another wave of immigrants. Now, believe it or not, because everyone at this point are European doesn't mean that they got along. So each wave of immigrants, people thought they were the dirtiest, that they were, scum, that they weren't, human, whatever their prejudices were. Because they were coming and they were taking over their jobs now and their possibilities of survival. Now they were the enemy. Okay. So you don't just have African American and European separation in Buffalo, but you had neighborhoods of each immigrant group. You had, at one point, the Lower West Side was mainly Italian. What we call East Side Buffalo, Broadway area was Polish. Another, so each area was really their own society. So then you had the Great Migration, some people call it, of the African American coming from the South, and especially in the 50s and 60s and so on, and a little bit before that. But that the biggest wave was in that 50s and 60s, I will say 40s to 60s time, where you're looking for work. What we had up here is Bethlehem Steel. You had car manufacturers. You had just a big boom in the industry. So you had many Southern people coming from North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, and so on, coming up here to look for work and sending money, or supposedly for some, for hopefully most people, sending money back, or I'm going to come back and get you, I'm going to send for you type of thing. My grandmother and her sister were the only two from their family in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, Brighton, Alabama, to come up to the north. And she settled in Buffalo area and Cleveland. So as African Americans began to move in, now we have a whole nother situation, right? Now, there are already African Americans here. Why? Because you had the Underground Railroad. Okay, we were in the north, so this was one of the areas at one point that you could have freedom, to the slave codes. So now the slave codes, now you have to go further up north. So we have different historical points in Buffalo, New York, at the end of what we say the foot of Ferry or Broderick Park, where people would cross over the river, the Niagara River, to get to Canada, which was freedom. So it's such a significant, area for us and a historical point for us. But at the same time, at that Niagara River and Erie Canal, you had immigrants coming over from Europe, trying to find freedom, So it was very interesting, how all this was, kind of taking place. But you already had, an African American community beginning to settle here in Buffalo. Now what? Okay. Well, of course, you have new immigrants. They don't want to give their jobs to African Americans. We're really foreign to them. We're really, beneath them. And we began to be an influx, by the hundreds coming into the city. So what we had in the 50s and 60s is what we call white flight, right? This has happened in many different cities, even Compton and, Los Angeles. We had in many different cities of now these white Americans are moving into the suburbs. These suburbs are being built up, and they're being sold to white Americans. And the African Americans, of course, they're in the inner city because why? Because those are the jobs, right? The the factory jobs, the grain mills, Bethlehem Steel, those are all in the inner city right now. So the African American is not really worried about going out to suburbs. We're just trying to be close enough to where we work at and survive. Um, so you have white flight. So you have whites, moving out to the suburbs, moving out of the city, taking their money with them. You have, remember, African Americans that just migrated up here without any money. We're looking for money. We're looking for jobs. We're looking for ways to take care of our families. So these neighborhoods go down, okay? And redlining happens, as more of us begin to come up into the city, redlining begins to happen. And to make a long story short, redlining is basically saying, well, I can't discriminate against you because you're Black in particular, but you need to have a certain amount of income in order to live in this particular area. Or you have to have a 2-family household, or certain things that wouldn't fit, that the African American or the Hispanic or other people that were undesirable could not fit the description, and therefore we were not able to live and work in those particular areas. So I'm hoping to make that a longer story short, but it's very interesting because history is not disconnected from our present and our future. So understanding our history, we understand where we're sitting today and what we're interacting with and dealing with today. I grew up mainly in Buffalo. I grew up, my first 6 years I was in and out with Kansas City and Buffalo. But for the majority of my life that's conscious that I remember, it's been Buffalo. And my mother, working class mom, nurse's assistant, worked in almost every senior citizen home I can think of, worked around the clock, 12-hour shifts. I've lived on the east side of Buffalo. I lived on the west side of Buffalo. I lived on the south side of Buffalo. Year to year, we would have to move. She became a single mom. And so I've had even though at that time it might have been a hardship, I count it as a blessing now because I can say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I've lived in, South Park. I lived on, Utica Street. I lived on Lower West Side. Like I have been in those neighborhoods. I have connected to those, connection in those neighborhoods. So I see as, I'm a part of the Buffalo community, not just East Side or West Side community. So I believe, that puts me in a particular seat or situation where I can hopefully connect all those, sides together as I do my work, as director.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I want to jump into also a little bit about the the whole concept of embracing Buffalo in the story, and how did you come to be involved with embracing Buffalo, and who all is involved in that?
Okay. So Dr. Sabrina Njai, social work professor and therapist. Usually, now you might have to help me with this one, but I know she would come to UB and be a visiting professor over the years. And she knew Vicki Ross, which is now our board chair. And she reached out to UB Kathleen Heim, Vicki Ross, and said, hey, I really would like to do something for Buffalo. And, what is it that the community needs? And I was thinking about some of the issues I was hearing about mental health and about the support that uh, some survivors were receiving and some survivors were not receiving, because they didn't have a family member that died, and they were, a lot of the people that were in the tops were kind of looked past for a while, or that's what it seems in the media. And from what I've heard, they didn't really get a lot of support, as far as mental health support and so on, from their employer. And so I said, it really would be great if you can come and do some time, if it can be free and it can be, just for, the survivors of the actual, the situation, and those, of course, the victims' families, first responders, those who haven't really gotten as much care or attention, and also Black healers and, leaders that have been there from day one, supporting and trying to keep, families lifted. Um, so Dr. Sabrina reached out to you, Dr. Carol, and Dina Adler, and Kenya, and says, this is my team. And so that's how I got to meet all of you wonderful women. And I just thought it was just this a powerful dynamic. Um, and that's how we began. We said we'll do it almost a week's, worth of connection, in the community. And we want to reach different people. So I said, if you're going to reach different people, you must have activities on different sides of Buffalo. Everyone will not come across the borders. And it's unfortunate, but it is true. So Main Street is one of those borders, and we have Seneca Street, South Park Avenue, we have different, that's kind of like known, people don't speak it, but you just know it and you can see it. There's a difference, of neighborhood, and it's a disconnection.
So when we think about this disconnection, do you see on the other side of this disconnection steps that can happen organically, or maybe with not so organically, with great planning, that can start to make connection happen again for the community? And let's have some blue sky moments in there about what would you like to see embracing Buffalo become? What's the hope for the future?
Yes. Hmm. I guess it's two things in my mind. I see a question that's up, and I guess this can kind of connect to both. Um, so for embracing Buffalo was a beautiful, um, I would say, continuation of the mental health, community reach out with, as people of color, and in our on with our professional hats on. Okay, if that makes sense. So there has been a big issue about, having mental health counselors that look like you, okay, that are people of color, that that can connect to the community. And that was one of the biggest significance of embracing Buffalo, because this was all majority Black women, okay, Black women led, and actually a nice mixture of, including white women, that were as support and as, giving information and connection and love and support, um, that made this possible. And people wanted to see people that look like them on both sides. on both sides. So it was really important for us to come together, intergenerationally, and with different backgrounds, to be able to connect with different people in these circles and healing circles. And we dealt with movement, we dealt with breath work, letting go, really saying what's deep in that heart, and trying to dig out some of that, um, the things that can continue to break you down. So the future of Embracing Buffalo, I see a more of a consistency of inner work that we can lead people in. Because as the Peace Center, we're always thinking about, how to change the system outside of us. But we must change within in order to know how to change without. As you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. So even though we can have a fire, a hurt in us, and try to fight the system, we can't go further. We can only go but so far if we are hurt and not healed. But if you're healed, you don't continue to be battered by what's coming at you. You can um, progress, and you can persevere, because you're no longer continuing being chipped away at. But if you're a whole person, then you can continue the battle, the larger systemic, battle. The one lady says here about, the right to vote. Have we been trying to encourage on a grassroots level, helping to fight institutional traditions? This is what we're doing. As the Peace Center, we have taken that stand and that step, through integrating our board, through helping ourselves first, right? Traditionally, the Peace Center has been a white, majority white organization, and that's okay. That's how it started, But they started wanting to help people of color, so I give them complete love and respect for that. And over the years, they have continued to want to do that. But now, uh, part of the help, though, for us to be more, what's the word, more effective, we had to change from the inside out. Our board had to be more integrated, and we make sure each year that it is more integrated, whether it's gender, race, economics. We try to make a more gender, uh, a board that is diverse, and at the same time, now they've chosen a Black woman to be, director. That only means anything if I am heard, if my leadership is respected, and if my experiences are warranted. So that's how we're making some grassroots changes. We have to make it from within, whether it's within our person, whether it's within our organization, or whether it's within our families. We have to start to make changes mentally, emotionally, and be healed from the inside out, so that we can heal the world. So that's why I see Embracing Buffalo going, to help people heal from the inside out, and be accountable for our actions and where we are, within our communities. And I want to say this, I didn't notice, it didn't occur to me, because I just thought of the Peace Center as a diverse organization, that needed a little bit more Black and brown color, but we was diverse. And I said, no, that's not really what we are right now. I said, we are a majority white organization that's Black led. And it felt so good understanding where we are now and where we want to be. We want to be, just a diverse organization. But that's not our roots. And I say it's okay because, every organization didn't, you have majority Black organizations that might not have a white soul in there, maybe working, maybe, so you have on both sides. But you know what? The only way we're going to integrate Buffalo, if we integrate ourselves, we integrate our communities, we accept each other for the content of our character, as Dr. King, would say, right? And not the color of our skin.
Yes, well said. Well, we are going to just take a pause right here while we have a word from our sponsor, and then we're going to come back and wrap up on the other side.
Good afternoon. Weightless with Dr. Carol Penn is brought to you by Penn Global Visions, Penn Global Medical Group, and the Tuxedo Connection. We'd like to thank you for supporting this program and for joining us this afternoon. We invite you to listen to the podcast of all of our shows at anchor.com, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as videos on YouTube. So now let's return to Dr. Carol and her super friend guest. And thank you again for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for that word from our sponsors. And so, as we, get ready to wrap up today's discussion and all the things that we've thought about in terms of leadership, in terms of how Buffalo came to be such a segregated city, going on into the project and the idea of embracing Buffalo. I hope that our audience is taking in how to be in touch with Deidre ML, the Executive Director of the Western New York Peace Center, as well as how to support and donate for embracing Buffalo itself, something that we both believe very strongly about in terms of creating the possibilities for not just, it's beyond going back to the way things were before what occurred in May of 2022, but really creating something that's new and building forward from that. So just what are your parting thoughts that you would like to share with our audience today?
Well, what I hope to see embracing Buffalo help us with, the Peace Center with, is setting a tone and a safe space for communities to come together to express their hearts, to express their feelings, their innermost feelings, to express their emotions, and to let it out in positive ways, and to let go so that we can truly come together as one community. I think every community needs this for different reasons. Communities are separated, whether it's economic or color, or it can be even the same, group. But, for instance, we have immigrants that are Sudanese. You have the Northern Sudanese and the Southern Sudanese. And do they work together here in Buffalo? No, they're still separate, even though they are all from the same country. So it's the same thing, that we need to learn to speak our truth, to listen to the other's truth, even though it's not yours, and to allow people to be as is, and to agree to become better in the future. So I hope that we all can do that for one another, and create those safe spaces for each other to have frank conversations and bring down those barriers of separation. Thank you so much, Dr. Carol. I really enjoyed being with you today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here. And I hope this is not going to be the last time we hear from you and see you and have you again as a guest for the show. Do you promise you'll come back?
Anytime, Dr. Carol. For you, anytime.
Well, wonderful. We have certainly learned so much today and so grateful for the work that you're doing. So stay strong in the work. And if there's anything that we can do to support you, let us know. So let's stay connected. All right.
Yes, most definitely, most definitely. And please, everyone, wnypeace.org, come visit our website and not just donate, just be a member and see what we're doing and let us know how we can help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is a wrap for today's show. I'm going to let us enjoy our wonderful theme music for Weightless. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone again next week. Thank you again so much to Deidre ML for being our very special guest today as we journeyed with the medicine of embracing Buffalo. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
All right.
Weightless, weightless. No matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Greatness. Time you opened up your eyes, you were courageous. Courageous. If only they could see you going through your paces. It's amazing. Weightless.